too far. Oh, that's why. It's the old one. Sorry, there we go. The high school feasibility study is Article 25. The town has been fortunate to be invited into the eligibility process in this past December, and this article will be funding the feasibility study. The select board is looking forward to partnering with the schools in the years to come towards looking towards a new high school, and this feasibility study is part of the first steps that we've taken. I wanted to call out and say thank you to, there was a working group put together with Frank Agora and Hillary Bresnahan from the school committee and Tina High from the select board that worked behind the scenes to get things ready for a school building committee. And just if anybody is interested in applying for these there's various positions that are open to the public, and there'll obviously be lots of further opportunities to participate. But if you would like to have a role in the school building committee, submit your name to the town manager's office, which can be found on the town website, and you can find your way, and we'll see if there's a spot for you. There's also an article here, Article 22 for HCAT. We want to make sure that we recognize the importance of HCAT in our community. They're right back there and helping us to ensure that people who can't be here this evening will be able to see the proceedings at their home. And they're part of getting the word out for town government and broadcasting public meetings throughout the year. And the community support is important as people cut the cord. There's some financial changes that need to take place, and we hope this body will continue to support HCAT, and we appreciate all the things that HCAT does for us. So thank you very much to HCAT. There we go. Wanted to take a quick moment to talk to you about something that is not on this warrant that we took off the warrant, the DPW project. I know there's a lot of concern and consideration about this particular topic. The facilities as they currently are on Central Street and Arch Street are beyond their useful life, and they need to be replaced now. And we took the article off because, as some miracle, things look like the cross street location appears to be coming out of land court 20 years after the fact. And it's not a residential neighborhood, it's in an industrial area, and it would require less investment for grading the land, so it could be considerably cheaper than the Arch Street location. So it's incumbent on the select board to make sure that we are taking that into consideration, and we want to make sure that we're getting the best facility for the right price. We don't want to be, if we have an opportunity to find something that could be less expensive and a better fit, we want to explore that. So we will have more in October. We're not putting this off any further than we have to, but we also want to make sure that the considerable savings is appreciated by the community. There we go. So among the accomplishments of the community, first of all, we talk about the MSBA process. We're beginning that process with the schools. Goodwill Park is almost completed, the project. Sewers continue to make progress, and I'm happy to report, and we continue to report, that we're using grants and earmarks wherever possible to minimize any tax or ratepayer impacts. Norfolk Street, the water main replacement continues as scheduled, and sidewalk construction is moving along as well. And the Marshall Street solar project should be completed, not the one on the Bird property, the one over the landfill, is almost ready to be turned on, which will start bringing in more revenue to the town. We also have, I wanted to make a quick mention of the strategic plan from Envisioning Future Holliston. It's a 5-year roadmap, and there's this particular exercise of the warrant here is in part the culmination of many of those plans, and a lot of these are in progress, and they continue to be in progress as we continue to move forward with infrastructure, sustainability, and community engagement at this time. It's a reflection of what people have put into it and helps guide decision making for the decision makers, and it's a living document that continues to be updated. Along that line, the policy There we go. The Policy Advisory Committee, PAC, has an update that they continue to be looking for people who can volunteer. They were out in the hallway looking for people to participate and help out with continuing the efforts for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and supporting the strategic plan. And so if you are interested in participating, please reach out to the town manager, and you can put your name into the ring. Wanted to give a quick thank you to a few people. We want to in particular thank Frank Gervasio and Cheryl Houle, who put an enormous amount of work into this warrant. And thank you for all that you do on a daily basis and for getting us ready for this evening. Particular thank you to Donna Muzzy and Peg Driscoll for all the things that they do in the town manager's office. If you go in there, they are the wonderful smiling faces who take care of you at that office. Also thanks to Chris Mayo, James Keast, and Chief Cassidy, who helped make this evening work smoothly. And also big thank you to the people on the dais. We have Michelle Zemer, the moderator, Liz Greendale, and Kevin from Sanderson, is that right? From the town clerk's office, and Liz Leiden is town council this evening. Lastly, we're talking about some changes to town staff. We're welcoming Cheryl Houle as the new HR director and assistant town manager. Also, welcome to Cynthia Listevnik, who's a very familiar face to many of us, but she is now the head of the center and the Council on Aging. And we are going to be saying goodbye to our town planner, Karen Sherman, in the coming weeks. So we want to say thank you to Karen for all her service for the town of Holliston. And we... And then we want to make sure that we say thank you to all the town staff who work tirelessly every day to make our town a better place, often without enough gratitude. So from us, from the select board in particular, and I'm sure all of you would share that too, thank you to all the town staff for all you do for us as residents of Holliston every day. Lastly, just if you want to follow with updates, we have Town Hall Digest. I'm trying to get more boards to participate in it, but it's only us, the select board at this time, giving you information what's happening beyond minutes and agendas, so you can see what we've done and what's going on continually. Also, make sure you contact the town manager's office if you want to be nominated for an appointment at an open seat. And if you can run for elected office, please do run for elected office and vote next week. Next Tuesday, May 19th, is the election. And coming to this particular occasion this evening is incredibly important. So thank you very much for coming tonight. This is something that's vital to the function of the community, and so we're very grateful and appreciative that you came out tonight to share your voice. So thank you very much, and I'll stop talking.
Article 2, hear the report of the Finance Committee. To hear and act on the report of the Finance Committee. And the motion is move to receive the annual report of the Finance Committee. Do I have a second? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Okay, thank you.
Wait till Chris gets ready here. Okay. Thank you and welcome everybody. You know what my role is here, to go over the finances and the most important things we took cover tonight, which are how we spend your tax dollars. So first I got to figure out which direction this goes in. There we go. Okay. In keeping with the 250th anniversary of this country, I've been asked a lot over the years, about the FinCom, Select Board, how it all fits. So I figured I'd give a little civics lesson, take a minute or two. Everybody knows the Constitution divides our government into three branches: the legislative, the executive, and the judicial branch, right? That's reflected at the federal level, it's also reflected at the state level, and it's also reflected at the town level. Okay. So when you look at the local level, the Select Board and all other boards or committees are in the executive branch. The Select Board has purview over those boards. Some of them are independent boards, but they still ultimately go into the executive branch. Town meeting, you are the legislative branch. You have the power of the purse, just like the federal government has the power of the purse, the federal legislature. The Finance Committee is the equivalent of the Ways and Means Committee of the legislature, of Congress. Since we don't have two houses, we have one, which is town meeting. Our role is to make the recommendations to the full legislature, i.e. you, on how to allocate the funds that the town raises. Just like Congress or the state legislature, we take input from the executive branch, but ultimately we make independent recommendations. And that's why sometimes on occasion we don't agree. That's the way the government is supposed to operate. If we believe the executive branch is asking for something that we don't think you should support, we say so. If we think we should be supporting something that they don't want, we say so. That's part of the way good government works. So let's go right on to, guess I hit the wrong button. Oh, there we go. Okay, talking about this year's budget. So net state aid this year, as mentioned by Ben, was a little healthier than we had expected. It's up 3.95% per the House Ways and Means budget. And for those of you who don't know, the state doesn't usually pass the budget, the actual final budget, until just before the start of the fiscal year on July 1st. So anytime we're talking about the budget at town meeting in May, we're talking about the best estimate we have of where the state budget's going to turn out and where local aid will turn out. So it is subject to change right up until the last minute. Our local revenue, which is comprised of things like the excise tax, permit fees, those kinds of things, expected to be up about 5.9%, and I'll talk about that in a minute. New growth, which is additions to the tax base, we always model it around 325,000, which is kind of like the low water mark, and there's a reason for that, which is when you over budget in that area, it causes problems later if you don't meet your target. And the total tax levy ends up being up around 3.5%. Now, most of you who may look at that and say, well, what about Prop 2.5? Why is that 3.5%, not 2.5? Well, the answer is this represents the overall growth in the tax base. In other words, we add new dollars to the tax base every year. That's the new growth. So that new growth is supplemental to the allowed increase from Prop 2.5. So the overall increase in revenue to the town is up by more than 2.5%. And as I just pointed out, the actual change in the tax levy and what we'll all actually pay depends on the final numbers, which we won't have until later this summer, and typically the tax rate isn't set until the fall, which is why you get preliminary tax bills. So when you add it all up, we started this process looking at additional net revenue of about $2.4 million above FY26. Okay. Doesn't seem to be consistently moving here. Okay, so where were the challenges? If you recall, if you were here in October, I said FY27 is not looking good at all, okay? And I wasn't lying. When we had the model we were looking at back then, it showed an increased need of $3.5 million, and more than last year, and that was because of a 14.8% increase in our assessment to the Mass pension system, the moving of the regional dispatch center costs from the state to us. They gave us a grant for the first few years. Now the cost is moving into our budget. In addition, town meeting voted last year to hire a town engineer. There was money that was coming from a one-time source last year, had to be moved into the budget this year. And then, of course, we had committed to the schools to a 3.25% budget increase for this year. So when you add all that up, you sit there and say, okay, it's $3.5 million. At the time, it changed a little bit. As I said, it's 2.4 now, but at the time it was 2.3 million, and we were looking at a $1.2 million shortfall, which is why I said in October, we have work to do. And the good news is we did it. So how did we do it? Okay. Well, we did it by looking closely at the departmental budgets. As Ben mentioned, the select board does their work, the town manager does his work, finance committee does our work, and the town manager knew about the fiscal situation, obviously, and he recommended reductions where they were appropriate. One of the things he did recommend, and the only reason I pointed out here is because I just mentioned it was in the budget, we kind of took it out of the budget, most of it in 27, because the position hasn't been hired yet. So because of that, we didn't have to pull it in. What that means is that next year we're going to have to put it in. So the local revenue, as I mentioned, was up. That was largely due to our work on ALS, because part of local revenue are ambulance receipts, and when we get the higher certification for ALS, we're able to do more complex cases with the town ambulance, which results in a higher billing rate to insurance. So our ambulance revenue is up a little bit. Having said that, I want to be clear. ALS didn't come for free. The expenses were pretty significant to get to ALS certification. So while we're reaping a revenue benefit from it, the numbers don't show that it's been net revenue positive. That's okay, because we did it because the town wanted that service. But it would be false to look at it and say we just got more money because of ALS, because we had to spend the money to get the money, and they don't balance. Okay? We also made a change to the model in that we said we were originally planning on increasing the capital set aside, which is one of the articles later on, to a 1.9 million, and we ended up paring it back to 1.875, so that was another 25,000. But as Ben mentioned, the largest impact came from moving to new health insurance. And to put it bluntly, that's what saved our bacon this year, right? The change to the health insurance plan resulted in a savings of about $800,000, and I said we were at 1.2 million. You just wiped out 2/3 of it in one shot, right? So that combined with the increased state aid, you can see those two numbers add up to almost $1 million. So we were left with closing a gap that was much smaller, and that's much easier to do because local aid numbers may change, you may get little differences here and there, and that's how we got to balance. So the budget you see, basically results in level service across all town departments. Okay. The school budget is up a little bit more, a fraction more than 3.25%, because the Finance Committee is recommending that we fund a position there that we hope will result in financial benefit down the road. So it's kind of an investment to hopefully bring down costs later. We talked about and already approved the wage table. That's the 2% COLA. Some department heads got a market adjustment for compensation. And we did make a few low-level service expansions across several non-school departments, lest anybody think we only gave money to the schools. There were lots of other priorities we tried to fund where they were fiscally reasonable and fit into the budget. I always have to press it twice. Okay, so one of the things I want to talk about tonight was our OPEB. I give this update every year. As you know, we started funding this a long time ago. And when we started funding it, we said, look, we have to pay this obligation. We got to put away this money. We'll get there. And the good news is we're getting there, right? We're getting there. We're at $35.3 million on a $49 million liability, which will be revalued this year. So it's going to change because it gets revalued every 2 years. But we're now within 10 years, according to the last valuation. And that may not sound like much of an accomplishment, but there are two things I want to point out. We are already sitting at the 95th percentile in the state in terms of dealing with this liability. And that is thanks to you for supporting our recommendations to put the money away to get ahead of this problem. When we get to full funding, we reach a point where we can take that money and use it for something else, like maybe reducing the debt cost of a DPW or a high school, right? And we're not going to be in the position other towns are in, and you've seen this if you've looked at other towns. They're having a lot more difficulty this year because they haven't been following good financial practice, and it's coming to, frankly, pardon my language, to bite them in the ass, right? But the reality is that thanks to you supporting this ongoing effort, it's tough to do when you look at needs and you say we got to stay the course, but we're getting there. We stay the course a few more years, and then we're done. And then we'll be probably one of the only towns in the Commonwealth to not have this giant liability hanging over their heads. So that's thanks to you guys. Okay. Now, having said that, that assumes, as I haven't bolded in yellow here, it assumes we continue funding at the level we're funding now. So we've got just a little more to go, but we've got to stay the course. Okay. Okay, so let's talk capital expenditure fund briefly, because that's obviously going to be a topic tonight. The capital appropriation that we had, and you heard mention of the working group from years ago, not the working group that's for the schools, this is a different working group. There was a model that was done where we had anticipated growing the capital appropriation, the set aside that we have in an article every year in May, by about $500K more than where it's sitting now. And that was partly because we had some fiscal challenges where we said, okay, we can't grow this as fast as we would like. However, the capital that we need for the town doesn't change, right? You need to replace your trucks, you need to replace your fire engines, you need to replace your police cars. So because of that, we haven't been putting away as much as we would have liked, okay? Now that's okay, because we had kind of saved. We knew we were going to go through a little bit of a difficult time, but now we're getting to the point where we have to start refocusing a little bit on what our capital plans are in the future. And I'm only pointing that out now, not because it has anything to do with tonight directly. everything we recommended tonight is already accounted for. We've already taken that into all our modeling, so it's not like we have to not spend capital money tonight. I'm bringing this up now because that's going to come up in October, right? Just like I said in October, the budget's going to be a challenge in May. What I'm saying now is not that it's going to be a challenge, but this is going to be the priority for October. We usually do capital in October, and we're going to need to start focusing a little more on beefing that fund up to meet our capital needs. Okay? So, and again, I always have to press it twice. So the notable financial articles, I just wanted to point out a few things where the Finance Committee either made tweaks or has differences that we wanted to let you know about. So Article 4, the revolving fund spending limits. If you look at our recommendation, it recommends that the Pinecrest revolving fund receive a $250,000 limit, not a $400,000 limit. And I just wanted to explain what that meant. By law, when a revolving fund reaches its spending limit, the money can be expended above the limit. But what is required when it hits the limit is that entity that controls the fund has to come to the Select Board and the Finance Committee and justify the spending above the limit. Basically say, this is why we need to go above. And if the Select Board and Finance Committee say, yep, we're okay with that, they can spend above the limit. It does not form a hard cap. It only sets a reporting limit for the two boards. Okay? Several years ago, we raised the limit from Pinecrest from $250 to $350 because they had a one-time expense we knew about, and we said, okay, we'll just raise it so you can deal with this one-time expense. When we saw it going up to $400K this year, we were like, wait a minute, the idea of $400,000 being expended without any oversight direct, I mean, you have the Golf Course Advisory Committee, but without any Finance Committee or Select Board oversight, we were like, we're not as comfortable with that. We would prefer it to be at $250. They can spend to the $400, but then they just have to come to us and say, this is what we're spending it on, so that we know what they're spending it on. So just to be clear about that, our recommendation for Article 4 is just to put that revolving fund at a reporting limit that requires them to come to us. And we've talked about this with representatives from the Golf Course Committee. I hope they seem to be fine with it, so hopefully they are. But because I think people get confused that that's a hard spending cap, and it really isn't. It just sets a reporting limit for the two boards. Article 16, we said we would make a recommendation here, and our recommendation is to approve the article. As you will see, it's going to be amended. And we saw the amendment, and our article is to approve it as amended. So I'll let the assessors talk about that when that article comes up. Okay. Article 17, of course, is the omnibus, and just for clarity's sake, the overall budget went up 3.3% across all departments, which is very reasonable, especially given that we're not in the environment we were in 10 years ago where inflation was very low, right? So 3.3% is probably typical growth. Article 19, of course, is to make capital purchases. We're in favor of all the purchases listed. As you know, and as I just pointed out, most of the capital will be dealt with in October. And the CPC article, the only reason I have this on this list is because there are two big projects in there, and we want to make sure everybody's paying attention to that. We support the projects, but we want to make sure that everybody pays attention to the fact that there are two multi-$100,000 projects in there. Okay. Obviously, the big kahuna on this warrant is the feasibility study for the high school, and I will take personal responsibility for this. I did pretty much everything possible to screw up the recommendation we put in the warrant. So just to be clear, okay, what the Finance Committee is actually recommending, okay, is that we take $2,050,000 from the Capital Expenditure Fund. We take $100,000 from the HVAC article. It's in the recommendation, the HVAC article from the schools, and we take $350K from either of two articles. And the reason I'm saying either of two is because we originally said to take it from the DPW money. Remember, for those of you who were here, we put aside $7 million for the Cross Street DPW. Last May, we reallocated that for other DPW work. There's now a question on whether that vote is actually valid for that article last year. That came up literally last Friday, so it was not something we had a chance to deal with. Because of that, we are recommending that the town clarify that motion, and I know there will be discussion about it, to say take it from either the original $7 million or the moved $7 million, still the same $7 million, just for clarity's sake, because we're not sure what that incorrect interpretation of the vote last year will mean down the road, and we do not want to hold up the feasibility study because of it. So just to be clear, the point of our recommendation, when we get there, I'll be making a motion to amend the motion to clarify this, but that's because of a potential difficulty with the vote that was taken last year. But in the end, and I'll be perfectly clear about this, the Finance Committee is recommending $2.5 million in total for the feasibility study. It's the first step of the process. It's partially reimbursable, and the commitment is already going, and you'll see it in the motion, that the reimbursement is going to go back to the capital expenditure fund when unexpended monies will go back to the capital expenditure fund. When the money comes in, we will decide what to do with the reimbursement. But just to be clear, $2.5 million for the feasibility study. So finally, there we go. Okay, so finally, the budget you're going to see tonight reflects our fiscal discipline, which we've been good in maintaining over the years, while we're sustaining the level of service that the town expects. But as I said, we were saved in a sense by a change in the town's health insurance, right? Which is good. You know, less suffering is better. But now we're in a position where we're looking at 2 debt-funded projects. We have the Cross Street DPW, which has already been approved. And just to remind you, we did already approve Cross Street as a DPW debt exclusion 2-3 years ago. Okay. But now we're going to have the high school on the horizon as well, potentially. And this is what we did it all for, right? When we borrow, that AAA rating will have the greatest financial impact because that will significantly reduce our borrowing costs. And I wanted to emphasize that because I mentioned being disciplined about OPEB and other things. We have to maintain that discipline because we're going to be going out to market in a few years. I don't know when, could be 2 years, could be 3 years, could be 5 years. But that bond issuance, for whatever purpose, is going to cost the town a lot more money if we're not AAA. And finally, just remind you, as I always do, we meet on Tuesdays during the budget season. Our meetings we've gone completely virtual since COVID because we find that public attendance is much greater than when we meet in person. So we will continue to do that. But the overarching message that I want to give you is what's in the box on the bottom. Our adherence to fiscal discipline has allowed us to recommend a balanced budget with no service reductions this year. But with 2 looming debt projects, it is more critical than ever that we maintain focus on the sustainability to reduce our debt cost. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to Article 3, hear report of the school committee. The motion is to hear and act on the report of the school committee. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the... Oh. Okay, I'm sorry. The motion is move to hear the report of the school committee. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay.
Okay. This just goes to the projector. Yep, okay. Thank you. Okay. Good evening, everyone. It's so good to see you all here tonight. I'm Sarah Fitzgerald, Chair of the Holliston School Committee, and I'll begin with a brief overview of the state of our schools. Following me, Dan Alfred will take a deeper dive into the school budget, and to close out the presentation, Dr. David Jordan, our Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations, will discuss the feasibility study for the Holliston High School MSBA project, which will be addressed later this evening under Article 25. The school committee hasn't presented at town meeting for a number of years, so thank you for the opportunity to be here talking to you. And I just wanted to share a really small glimpse of the incredible work that's happening at the Holliston schools each day. I also wanted to thank our superintendent, our building principals, and Tracy Flecker for helping put this together, pull up the highlights. Also, in case you'd like to zoom in on some of the details, we did link the presentation, I think it's on the town Facebook page. it's in the comments, so you might be able to pull it up that way. My pictures aren't too detailed, but as we get into the budget part, there's numbers that might be harder to see. In the interest of time, I'll only touch on a few of the highlights here. If I were to cover all of the great initiatives, we could be here for a while. But please know, across every school in our district, students and staff continue to accomplish remarkable things. Starting with Holliston High School, we recently had nearly 60 students, along with teachers and Principal List, travel to Japan over April break for educational and cultural exchange experience that students will remember for a lifetime. HHS also has a student-initiated and student-led unified stage project, which creates inclusive theater opportunities for students of all abilities, showcasing not only talent, but empathy and community. Our students are involved in the Holliston Drug and Alcohol Awareness Coalition. We have a youth action team that have represented our community at State House Advocacy Days and the 84 Movement Youth Leadership Conference, promoting prevention efforts around tobacco, vaping, and nicotine use. And our DECA students continue to excel in the business and entrepreneurship competitions at state, national, and even international levels. At the middle school, students participated in Challenge Day, which was a day-long, powerful workshop focused on reducing bullying, combating loneliness, and building empathy among students. RAMS also completed a successful production of Beauty and the Beast that our unified basketball team was a featured story on WBZ Boston News. At Miller Elementary, students showcased their talents through musical performances, and the long-standing tradition of the 18th Century Days continues through partnership with the Holliston Historical Society, helping students connect with local history in meaningful ways. This year also marks the retirement of Mr. David Keim after 27 years of dedicated leadership and service to the Holliston Public Schools. We're deeply grateful for his unwavering commitment to our students and families. Yeah. Okay, and then finally, at Placentino Elementary, students explored creativity and culture through programs like Cultural Connection hip-hop performances. Students also participated in Mathapalooza Night and Makerspace activities where they engage in hands-on STEM learning and engineering challenges. We also have a really strong community service aspect where students are collecting food for our local food pantry to help families in need. Okay, so beyond these individual school highlights, the district has made significant progress over the past several years on a number of important initiatives. We successfully negotiated a teacher's contract for 2023 through 26. Notably, this was the first negotiation in at least a decade that did not require mediation. The agreement achieved fair compensation for educators, while also supporting important priorities for student learning. This fall, we will enter into negotiations yet again, and while the current contract was supported by an operational override, there are no plans to pursue that option for the upcoming contract. We adjusted elementary school schedules so that Placentino and Miller now operate on the same schedule, eliminating an 85-minute gap between start times that created challenges for families. This change also reduced transportation inefficiencies by cutting the bus runs from 3 to 2. At the high school, we're implementing a new bell schedule for the next year. This is the first major schedule change in more than 25 years, and it's designed to better support student learning and address equity, access, and semester-based challenges that many students experience with the existing block schedule. We've also invested heavily in maintaining and improving our school facilities and infrastructure. Projects have included a new roof at Rams, roof repairs at Placentino and Miller, playground renovations, parking lot and sidewalk improvements, repairs at the high school, resurfacing of the high school track, and many other important upgrades. Much of this work was made possible through the support of town meeting, and we're sincerely grateful for that partnership. We've also completed numerous curriculum reviews in math and ELA and science. District-wide efforts are ongoing to provide a safe and supportive environment for all. The district has implemented a data dashboard which helps utilize data from an equity lens to address attendance, behavior, and mental health issues, as well as to understand needs and to enhance community partnerships to support students. Another major accomplishment was extending learning time by 45 additional hours per year for most students and 30 additional hours for students in grades K through 2. Over the course of a student's education, that represents more than half a year of additional instructional time. We also restored several leveled 7th grade math classes and maintained honors 8th grade science opportunities to ensure rigorous academic pathways remain available for all students. And importantly, Holliston was accepted into the MSBA eligibility period for the high school building project. This milestone represents the next phase of an effort that began more than a decade ago and required multiple applications over many years. Tonight's vote represents the first step that residents will take in what will likely become one of the most significant capital projects in Holliston in the last 50 years. Finally, this year also marks important leadership transitions for the district. We thank Dr. Susan Kuska for her years of service as she heads into retirement. We are excited to welcome Dr. Kimo Carter as Holliston's next superintendent beginning July 1st. Dr. Carter joined us from Weston Public Schools, where he served as Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning for the past 8 years. We are also welcoming back Jess Beatty as Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, and we have hired a new Director of Teaching and Learning, along with a new principal for Miller School. As you can see, there's a tremendous amount happening across our district, and even this is only a snapshot. Our students, educators, administrators, staff, and families continue to make Holliston Public Schools a source of pride for our community. Thank you again for your continued support of our students and our schools and our staff.
All right, good evening, everyone. I told the committee I would keep it brief, so I've cut my 70 slides down to 64. Let's kick this off. My goal is to put you all to sleep so you don't know what you're voting on. I think the most important highlight is to... Got it, thank you. Which degree from MIT was that? Yeah. Okay. So I think the most important thing to note, first of all, is that in the past two budgets, we have met our commitment made to the town during the September 2024 override, which was to achieve a 3.25% level service budget for the remainder of the contract, and we've done that. Our budget request tonight, so we're skipping around, is for $45,874,162, which does represent a 3.39. You have 3.8, but I have 3.9, so we'll have to figure that one out. One thing I noticed, I would note that on page 34 of your warrant, or at least the one that I have, it says that our budget increase was 5.3 million or 13%. As much as I would like that, while the budget number is right, that increase is not correct. As Dr. Shada mentioned, our increase of $60,000 above level service for the out-of-district coordinator was made possible by an increase in our expectations from the state for funding, and I want to thank Representative Arena DeRosa for all of his work with us to help fund Chapter 70 and the schools. Holliston's budget is in much better shape than many of our surrounding towns. I'm sure everyone sees in the news constant sort of discussions of layoffs. In surrounding towns, we're seeing additional sort of forced overrides where there are massive cuts or just massive cuts. These include places like Ashland, Bellingham, East Easton, Bridgewater, Framingham, Grafton, Medfield, Malden, Northbridge, Holden, Arlington, Marblehead, and Brookline. No, I'm still in the first one.
You went backwards.
Oh, well, we are regressive.
That was probably the third degree that cut me that one.
Yeah.
That's why I said it's the right button twice.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. One thing to note, though, is that our funding from Chapter 70 continues to be continues to decline as far as the percentage of the school's budget. This is the governor's budget, so it hopefully will be a little bit higher in 2027 than we're showing now. But over the past decade or so, we've gone from 24% to almost 21% funding from the state. So that basically means that more and more of the school's budget is being put onto you, the taxpayers. Nope. Okay, so this is a very busy slide, and so hopefully you can pull it up online. We'll also get it posted, but we had some technical difficulties getting it posted tonight. What I want to draw your attention to, though, is our percent increase for salaries. The last 2 years have actually been lower than the prior 2 years, and we continue to do our best to be as fiscally prudent as possible and only ask for the positions that we need and reshuffle as we see turnover for the priorities for where we have needs. Again, $45,874,162. That's the only number you need to remember. What? It's the far one that's fiscal year 27, 3.79%. That's just the salaries. So across, over the entire budget process, we obviously started with a much larger number. We started with 4.98% increase before any kind of priority needs. To get there, we worked very hard with Dr. Jordan and Dr. Kuska to look at where we were seeing retirements, any kind of mid-year resignations, other payment favorability, and ultimately we did cut 2 positions at the high school. These were non-classroom positions, and then we also are not backfilling 1 FTE due to a retirement. Any other positions that you hear about being eliminated or moved or anything like that are being done for non-budgetary reasons. Every year the schools move positions around as students move through the system in different ways. There are shifts, but what I can tell you is the only cuts are the ones that are on this page that are resulting in the budget. Just a little more detail about exactly the budget drivers. Obviously the biggest is the payroll, and then we were also seeing some net favorability from additional reimbursements for special education. But don't kid yourself, as we talk about the out-of-district coordinator, shoot. Why is it easier to go back? We have seen, and I think that this is being seen across the Commonwealth, probably across the country, and probably across the world, a dramatic increase in the number of 504s and IEPs, which are special education plans. Over the last 4 years, our IEPs and 504s have increased by 25%, even as our out-of-district placements have gone down by 17%. The out-of-district placements, though, as they decline, the prices have been going up. The state has been allowing significant tuition increases that are putting strains on many districts. If you go and look at actually many districts' budgets, part of the reason why they are having so much having difficulties is the increase in out-of-district costs. These are incredibly important things to spend on. We have a moral, social, and legal obligation to provide these services. I'm not trying to pit any students against one another, but it is just a fact that these are significant increases that are driving a lot of budgets, and within there, they're also making the classroom much more difficult for teachers to manage. The out-of-district coordinator that we were requesting and that the Finance Committee supports will be able to help take some of the pressure off of the student service administrators and the SSD, the student service director, now an assistant superintendent, by attending meetings out of district. I don't know, what many might not know is even if we send a student out of district, they are still our student. We still own the IEP and the 504, and we are still responsible for that student. So if they are in an out-of-district placement, there is travel to that school, there's work with the parents in that and the student in that school, and that takes a lot of time. And so that's behind the request for the 0.5 out-of-district coordinator. I work in finance, so we're always looking at kind of the risks and opportunities. You know, key risks are increased out-of-district placements that we weren't expecting. If we have to replace teachers at a higher rate than what we're budgeting. Energy prices. I was talking with Dr. Jordan the other day. Right now, if we had to lock in oil rates where they are versus this year, we would probably be looking at a couple $100,000 increase to our budget. So we're waiting, hoping, praying. We'll see. If the federal government cut our funding, that could be a significant hit to our budget. We receive about $1 million that isn't in the budget, but is going to offset and reduce the budget from the federal government, $850,000 in just one IDEA grant alone. And then if state aid were to come in lower due to state concerns, that doesn't seem to be where the trend is going this year, but it's still young. Opportunities, further budget favorability if we have additional turnover. Given all the other troubles that other districts are having, there's more than likely a great candidate pool out there of more junior teachers who are available and that we can hire at more attractive prices, rates, not prices. And then our solar installation, the lease that was approved at the last town meeting is going along faster than we were expecting, and we may actually see some benefits next year from that, though minor. So this is our whole list of priority needs, but obviously we're sticking with just our top one of $60,000 for the 0.5 out-of-district coordinator. But that doesn't mean those other needs don't still exist, and we'll have to figure out a way. Just briefly turning to capital. There you go. Most of our capital requests is for curriculum. Our teachers and staff have done a tremendous amount of work over the last year plus looking at our ELA curriculum and our science curriculum amongst others, and we have received significant matching grants for our ELA curriculum thanks to the hard work of Dr. Joni Menard and the other team and the other members of the team. So this one here comes with a 290,000 some big number. That if we fund this, we're also going to get that much money, and I think that there's more grants to be had in the future as well. Then we're looking for $50,000 or $100,000 split between this town meeting and next town meeting for curriculum textbooks for the high school to fund the new schedule, and $150,000 for technology infrastructure, which is really a $250,000 purchase, but we're receiving $100,000 in grants. Just a couple things on where we stand on large capital items that have already been approved. The Rams roof project, that's complete. We did a large overhaul of our playgrounds. That's complete. The Placentino Miller roof project that was approved, that we approved $1.35 million in funding last town meeting, is going forward, but it is the rapid repair program from the state is anything but rapid, and we are looking at potentially 2028 before that will actually get done. It comes with matching money, so there we go. And then the flag field, which is really a parks project, but we're partnering with them on that, along with repaving the access road. Should start soon and go on through the summer, with the road part of the project done by the middle of August. And then we have signed the select board has signed the PPA, and the superintendent has signed the lease for the solar on the roofs, and so that should be able to be done over the summer. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Jordan to discuss the feasibility study. So you push that twice sometimes, and then other times it's 3 times.
Hi everyone. So I've been here for about 14 years. This is the first time I've had to stand up here, so wish me luck. So the feasibility study, I'm tasked with kind of describing to you what it is and why does it cost so much. I will say that that was pretty much my first question is why is a feasibility study cost this much? That seems like a simple process. The more we got into it, the more we looked at different comps that exist in many of our neighboring communities in the state of Massachusetts, the more I realized the number of the $2.5 million is a reasonable and fiscally responsible number. This is something that we have been collaborating on as a community since we were awarded or entered into the eligibility period. Other way. There we go. There we go. So, a feasibility study, the major component of this is that it assesses the need, explores all of the possible options that exist within the town of Holliston, recommends a solution, and this is a very detailed and rigorous process, but the purpose that the MSBA, the Massachusetts School Building Authority, puts us through this is we would potentially receive approximately 50% on eligible expenses. And where we're discussing eligible expenses, the feasibility study, but really the building project as sponsored by the MSBA does a per pupil cost of the entirety of the project and provides you kind of with a base structure. If you are wanting to kind of expand and add and vote on as a community any additional aspects that are outside of kind of their base box, those would be additional costs that are not eligible for reimbursement. So this includes kind of a thorough process that takes us through a program assessment, followed by a detailed building evaluation, options analysis, schematic design, and cost estimating. We'll stay here. All right. We'll just work quick. Wherever it takes me, I'll just go. All right. So these are some of the folks that are involved. When you even just take along what their going rate or their salary when they're employed for us for those 12 to 18 month process, you are looking at a owner's project manager, somebody that has the entire project oversight, a designer and architect. We are looking at pretty much schematic designs, architectural plans at the outcome of this. We are looking at civil instructional engineers that are involved with our project, educational programmers. So this is not just an architect marking up what they think that the space should look like. There are going to be educational experts that join our school building committee and meet with our educators to assess to make sure that the shape of our building, what we want from our building meets the educational needs of this community. Additionally is a series of accountants and different individuals to help us with the community with cost estimation. So these numbers are based off of MSBA's kind of percentage increases, but what I did for this is I took the $2.5 million based off of the MSBA's percentages that go towards each one of these costs, and this is what it's identified, is that roughly about $400,000 go towards the owner's project manager, the individual that oversees or the group that oversees the project over the course of the feasibility study. Not just the funding of the architect, but the actual architectural plans and design plans and fees are the primary and most significant portion of the cost. The civil engineer at about $300,000, the educational programming at $200,000 cost estimation, and contingency, MSBA fees, and legal. Now the MSBA suggests that you build in. The MSBA fees are not that we're paying the MSBA. These are their built-in understanding of like any admin costs associated with state compliance, any work that needs to be done associated with that, any unforeseen planning expenses, and any, as was discussed before, ads or non-reimbursable expenses that we would want to and choose to as a community to do and add to that, as well as site changes or scope changes and any legal expenses associated with the feasibility study. Right? Yeah, I heard that. Okay. So while this is just a small sample size of the comps that we've looked at, we kind of assessed roughly about 25 to 30 different comps relative to the percentage of, or the number of students that we would have within our enrollment, give or take. But we looked at a series of comps ranging from about 2019 to 2025. You are going to see that this is kind of where we landed as far as the $2.5 million, is that you do have comps that might be as low as $1.5 million for 600 students, but then you might end up at a feasibility study that's $3 million in the same year for 1,200 students, and we fit right in kind of the middle as far as the number of students that we have. Please note that we are in 2026. These are 2024 as far as those numbers, and you're going to see Keefe Tech as a bullet point there for the $2 million. When we did pull the 25 comps and did some analysis of that, we tried to kind of look at it a different view and look at kind of per pupil costs based off of the number of students we had. What this image is, or this is trying to show you, is that the longer we wait as far as feasibility studies is that the costs are increasing. So every year that goes by, that is at least the trend, is that those costs are rising. Anywhere from $1,700 back per student back in 2019-21 to $3,591 in 2025. That's right. So there is also a cost to us not doing this as well. So we do have a very old building here at the high school. These are some of the expenses that I have on my maintenance plan that we need to think about if we're not moving forward with a new high school. The risk of not moving forward with a new high school at this point is this kind of puts us at the back of the line. And while a full build, start to finish, is 5 to 7 years, depending on how quickly we move through the process, if we don't move forward, we might be looking at a much longer delay. And as you heard from FinCom and heard from the select board as well, is that we've been putting forth with the MSBA for applications over the last about 10 years. So that process is a long process as far as receiving that MSBA funding. And again, that is about a 50% reimbursement on what could end up being, and I won't quote Lexington's price of their high school, but might be a $300 million project that we're looking at here for a new high school. So on this is that you're seeing a series of aging items that we have inside of our building. We have a roof. We had just the very space that we're in. We did an entirely new envelope of the roof that you're in and the space that you're in right now. That was a significant cost to the community. We are going to be in need of, at some point, an entirely new roof here at the high school. We have single pane windows, doors. We're in need of a boiler at some point, and some of these additional costs as well. So these are significant and things that we need to cover at some point in the next 5 to 10 years. So with that said, questions or, okay.
Hello.
Thank you.
Actually, if you have questions, I'd appreciate if you can hold them until we get to the appropriate article. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to Article 4, revolving fund spending limits. To see if the town will vote to authorize the spending limits of the following revolving fund established under the town bylaw and general laws, Chapter 44, Section 53E and a half. Wetlands filing fee, $40,000. Council on Aging, $5,000. Community farm, $5,000. Composting kit, $3,000. Recycling and sustainability, $60,000. EV charging stations, $50,000. Response and recovery, $25,000. Abutters list, $5,000. Building inspection, $165,000. Town hall rental, $25,000. Senior center van, $10,000. Agricultural commission, $10,000. Sealer of weights and measures, $10,000. Fluorescent bulb recycling, $3,000. Banner, $5,000. Accident fee, $5,000. Inoculation, $20,000. Cost of prosecution, $30,000. Nutrition, $10,000. Pinecrest Golf Course, $400,000. Technology repair and replenishment. And the motion is, move that the town authorize the spending limits of certain revolving funds established under the town bylaw and Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53E and a half, and the amounts presented in Article 4 of the warrant. The Finance Committee recommends that the Pinecrest revolving fund limit be approved at $250,000 for fiscal year 2027, and all other limits be approved as listed. And the vote for that was 6-0, Mr. Laskowski absent. Okay, do I have a second? Okay, any comments? Oh, Dr. Shada?
Yes. Per our recommendation, I'd like to make a motion to amend the Pinecrest revolving fund limit from $400,000 to $250,000. As I said before, this doesn't mean they can't spend the money. It just means they have to come for approval when they get above the $250,000.
Okay, do you have that in writing? Or do you need it? No. Okay, we're good. Is there any, is there any comment on the motion to amend? Oh, is there a second? Okay, are there any comments on the motion to amend? Okay, no comments, so we'll take a vote on the motion to amend. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, now we're voting on the new motion, which is the motion to amend.
No, the motion as amended.
The motion as amended. Right, the motion as amended. Is there a second? Second, okay, I heard that. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Okay, so that carries. Thank you. Okay, Article 5 was part of the consent agenda, as was Article 7, 8, oh, 2 pages stuck together. Okay, so Article 6 is pay unpaid bills. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money for unpaid bills from prior years or take any action relative thereto. And there's one bill, Town of Medway, for fiscal year 2024 to 25, in the amount of $12,425 for ambulance, and the funding source would be FY26 budget. The motion is, move that the town appropriate $12,425 from the fiscal year 2026 ambulance department budget to pay unpaid bills as listed in Article 6. Okay, thank you. The Finance Committee recommends that the town appropriate $12,425 from the FY26 ambulance budget for the late bill, and their vote was 6-0 with Mr. Laskowski absent. And we need a 4/5 vote to approve this. So if this vote isn't unanimous, we're going to take a hand count. So all those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. There's a comments. Sorry. And
sorry, it's been quick. I just have a question.
Name and address.
Sorry, Vincent Murphy from 432 Norfolk Street. I have a question regarding why are we getting a $12,425 bill? We've gone many years without having one, with having unpaid bills and having to do this at town meeting. What happened with this one? Was Medway late? Okay, so we can slap Medway down for being, okay. Also, I want to point out, last year I was made to write an amendment. So I want to say, you're playing favorites over there.
Oh, that's actually nice.
Yeah, so to answer the question, the town of Medway adopted a new billing system for their ambulance services, and in the process, several bills were lost. So we received several after the fact for fiscal years 24 and 25.
Are there any other questions? Okay, we'll proceed to a vote. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay. 7 was consent agenda, 8 consent agenda, 9 consent agenda, 10 consent agenda, 11 consent, 12 consent agenda. 13 consent agenda, 14 consent agenda, 15 consent agenda. Now we're on to Article 16. Before I start, did everyone pick up an amendment on the table outside? Okay, well, if you have it, you might want to read it now. So this is petitioning the general court to pass a special law enabling Holliston to provide a means-tested senior citizen property tax exemption for debt exclusion funded construction projects. It's sponsored by the Board of Assessors to see if the town will petition the general court to approve a special act authorizing the town of Holliston to establish a means-tested senior citizen property tax exemption for debt exclusion funded construction projects, and to authorize the select board to make any non-substantive amendments as may be required by legislative council or take any action relative thereto. Okay, and the motion is move to approve Article 16 as printed in the handout. So do people want a few minutes to look at the handout? Is there a second? Second. Okay. Yep. You want to speak on that?
Hi, good evening. Jeff Marshall, Chair of the Board of Assessors. I have the enviable to follow the bill payer and 2 doctors on a fairly dry topic, but with some math in it. But I do want to explain the value of this amendment. So I'll read the amendment, and the reason why there is an amendment is, as we normally do, Principal Assessor Rudden and I meet with the Finance Committee to go over our expense year, and this year we had this warrant come up, and there was some recommendations, some dialogue around making sure that every citizen participates in the process and pays at least some share of their tax liability. And that's why we have amended this article so that citizens who qualify for this do have to pay at least half of their obligation. So, right. So, I'm going to read the amendment. I move that the town vote to amend Article 16 as follows. The wording in the first sentence, Section 1 of the proposed act be changed from in an amount equal or less to in an amount less than. And then also in Section 3, the proposed change would be to provide, however, that to replace this wording, provide, however, the amount of exception shall be less than 10% or more than 40% of the amount of the circuit breaker income tax pursuant to Section K of Section 9, Chapter 62 of the general laws of which the applicant qualified the previous year, and amend that to read, provided, however, that the amount of the exemption based on the circuit breaker income tax pursuant to Section K of Section 6 of Chapter 62 of the general laws for which the applicant qualified in the previous year shall not be more than 50% of the debt exclusion borrowing costs in the fiscal year. Everybody get that? There'll be a test later. So do I have a second? Yes. Okay.
Right, we don't need a separate motion for this because the original motion that I made was to accept the wording that was in the handout.
Okay.
Okay, are there any questions? Oh, Mr. Murphy? It's okay.
Stay right there. Sure. I'm going to ask you. I'm confused. What does this mean from a dollar standpoint for income? Because not clear, but I looked up the circuit breaker. So can you clarify who's going to be eligible for this?
I have slides to go through that if you.
Oh, then I
yeah, I was trying to. Yep, no, it's fine. And Mr. Rudden is here, and he can. He'll want to speak here at the end, but I'm going to go through some slides here quickly to kind of show you what all those words meant. The clicker, the right clicker, the right button, I got to point that way. Okay. So what would the amended article do if passed? The town will petition the state of legislature to enact a special legislation for the town of Holliston that would enable qualifying senior households to have an annual principal and interest borrowing cost of the approved Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion projects reduced, not eliminated, but reduced, and that's really the amendment, the core of the amendment. Then the town meeting votes to reauthorize every 3 years for an additional 3 years. Senior households who qualify and receive the Massachusetts State Senior Circuit Breaker income tax credit by filing Schedule CB with their taxes would be eligible to apply for a new town exemption. The elected Board of Assessors will review the submitted applications received by the deadline and make recommendations for the annual exemption percentage to the Select Board. The Select Board would review this information and approve the exemption percentage for that year. The amount of the senior household exemption shall not be more than 50% of the total debt exclusion costs, principal and interest, in any fiscal year. That's, again, the core of this change, is to require that no more than 50% of the debt that would be paid, would be eligible, will be credited to them or exempted. So how would this work? Hypothetical town needs to borrow $100 million at 4% for 20 years. Oh, sorry. It moves too fast. Okay. Okay, so here's an example. We vote at town meeting to borrow $100 million at 4% for 20 years. The first year debt service payment on that is about $7.4 million. The impact on fiscal year 2026 tax rate, so we're using the existing tax rate, would add $1.76 to the cost of our taxes. The new tax rate would then be $16.05. The average single-family assessment in town is about $740,000, $739 and change. The average tax bill would be increased by $1,301 for this scenario. Now, a senior household, age 65 and older, who applies for and receives the maximum state senior circuit breaker income tax credit, and in 2026, that was $2,730. They receive that off of their taxes for the state. So we take an assessed value, again, the same example, the assessed value of this home is $529,100. We multiply it. Yeah, this is a real example from this past year. We'll multiply it by $176 per thousand, and that equals a debt exclusion cost of $931.22. The eligible senior household applies for and qualifies for this local exemption that we're talking about here. The Board of Assessors recommends 15% match of all eligible senior households. 15%. The Select Board, in this example, approves the 15% match. So the eligible senior household local exemption at the approved 15% match would be $409.50, or 15% of that $931. The full tax impact of the local debt exclusion, which is $931 minus the $409, the eligible exemption or the tax due from this example, this citizen, is $521.72. The eligible senior household in this example meets the requirements of Section 3 because $409.50, their eligible exemption, is not more than 50% of the total amount of $931.22. So all residents would pay an additional 8 cents more in their personal to pay for that person's exemption. So it costs the citizens to provide this benefit to the senior of about 8 cents. Sure.
Thank you. I'm Kevin Rudden, the principal assessor. I want to say one thing before when you read this act, it looks like a lot of legalese. 4 years ago at this very forum, you approved the exact same wording, except for those 2 sentences you amended that are germane to a debt exclusion. So you created, or you agreed to petition the state legislature for what we now call the means-tested senior exemption. All the wording in the proposed act completely identical. I know it looks like a lot of legalese, but I just want to put it in context. You've already approved it once. Now you're approving specific words for debt exclusion. So right now what a qualifying senior is, on your state income tax, you fill out what's called Schedule CB to see if you earn the circuit breaker income tax exemption. If you do, you're eligible to apply right now for the Senior Circuit Breaker Means Tested Act. If this was approved, you'd be able to apply for this. And to put it in context, 33 people got that this year. We're not talking thousands or hundreds. 33 people were eligible this year. The Mass Department of Revenue sets the limits every year on income and assets. For fiscal 26, the income limits were $72,000 for a single person, $91,000 for head of household, $109,000 for married. Just to put that in context, the other senior exemptions available cap off at $30,000 of income. And for most married couples where both partners are getting Social Security, they're over that already. The assessed value of a residence, and we're only allowed up to count 1 acre of land. If you're nice enough to have more, we have to back the value out. This year is $1.172 million. I can tell you there's not a senior in this town that has property worth that much. I checked. And assets cannot exceed $250,000, and that means that does not mean your house. That means the sum total of any pensions, savings, etc. you have. And I can tell you nobody comes near to that in the people who got it. The state also sets the maximum circuit breaker income tax credit, and this year it was $27.30. I believe it's going to $27.90 in fiscal '27. The income limits are going up just slightly. In the slide that my chairman referred to, when he talked about a 15% match, not everybody gets that $27.30. It depends on your income. This year we had people get as little as $306, right up to the $27.30. When we talked about a 15%, it's 15% of the amount they got in that exemption. So if they got the $27.30, we're talking about 15% of that. That was the example up there. That was a real person, by the way. Names deleted to protect people. That was an actual application this year. That was their home value. We didn't pull that out of thin air. It's a real person. That's what they would have gotten. And again, they would pay about 47% of the debt exclusion cost. We're just trying to give people relief. And if you saw the senior exemption filings like we do every day by state law, they're confidential, I would tell you that most of the people who receive them need them to stay in their houses. We're not proposing this because we're generous. We're trying to help people cope with what's in the future. One of the members of the FinCom asked me who is lobbying for this, and the answer is me, because we deal with the people every day at our counter, and we're just trying to help people stay in their houses. Thank you.
If there are no more questions, we'll proceed to a vote. Oh, okay.
Just the regular,
Well,
not the
Vin-
overrides, not the exceptions?
Could
My
you-
question, Vin Murphy, 432 Norfolk Street.
Right, but we didn't hear your question.
My
Could you-
question for those watching from home was, what did we approve? Kevin mentioned that we approved something a few years ago, and I just want clarification. What did we approve then?
4 years ago, this body approved unanimously, I might add, a request to petition the state legislature to grant an exemption on property taxes, specifically for seniors who qualified for the state circuit breaker. The reason why the state's income tax circuit breaker was chosen as a model is very simple. The state sets all the criteria. It's an objective third body, and by means tested, we mean you have to meet those means that they say. So the town approved it at the 22 annual town meeting. It took about 18 months to go through the legislature. Governor Healy signed it in May of 2024. It's been in place for 2 years. The first year, we had 12 people apply, 11 qualified, and this year we had 33 apply, and all 33 qualified. And just to put that in perspective of context, to advertise it, we sent a mailer to 2,524 people over age 65 in January of calendar 25, and we got the 33 applications. So out of the senior population at that time, I can't do what 33 over 2,500 is as a percentage, but it's, like I said, not hundreds apply and qualify. Although the people that get it do all say thank you, because they tell us that every day. In fact, I'm looking at some of them in the audience, I just can't say who they are. I hope that answers your question, sir.
Are there any more questions? Okay, we'll proceed to a vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, that passes. Thank you. The next article is the fiscal year 2027 budget, also known as the omnibus budget. To see what sums of money the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds to meet expenses and outlays to town departments, salaries of town officers, sundry and miscellaneous but regular expenditures for a reserve fund to appoint trustees or caretakers, or authorize the select board to appoint caretakers of the cemeteries of the town not otherwise provided for, and further to set the salary of the elected town clerk pursuant to General Law, Chapter 41, Section 108 for the ensuing year, or take any action relative thereto. I'll read this. If you look in your warrant, you'll see each budget listed in more detail than I'm going to read, but that's the breakdown. I'm going to read these all together, and then if people have questions about individual budgets, you can ask that after the motion is made, okay? And this is all for the fiscal year 2027. Select Board, $452,813. Finance Committee, $1,815. Reserve Fund, $400,000. Town Accountant, $227,698. Board of Assessors, $328,792. Treasurer Collector, $4,052. Well, I'm going to start all over with that one. $452,770. Human Resources, $193,137. Technology, $386,534. Town Clerk, $204,627. Elections, $63,037. Conservation Commission, $78,599. Planning Board, $120,671. Zoning Board, $7,394. Economic Development, $56,820. Sustainability, $30,719. Police, $3,955,508. Regional Dispatch, $161,178. Fire, $1,106,025. Ambulance, $1,439,592. Building Inspection, $270,267. Emergency Management, $22,529. Animal Control, $38,000. DPW Highway, $1,853,212. Facilities Maintenance, $343,028. Snow and Ice, $250,000. Street Lighting, $58,300. Solid Waste, $1,550,000. Wastewater Treatment, $132,900. Motor Vehicle Fuels, $155,000. Board of Health, $184,892. Council on Aging, $331,543. Youth and Family, $234,555. Veteran Services, $102,185. Library, $730,461. Parks and Recreation, $183,234. Rail Trails, $9,500. Celebrations, $2,500. County Retirement, $3,379,949. Workers' Comp, $379,656. Unemployment, $50,000. Employee Benefits, $8,870,678. Liability Insurance, $354,945. Holliston Public Schools, $48,874,162. What? I'm going to reread that, okay? $45,874,162. Keefe Technical, $1,541,200. Debt Service, $337,650, and the general fund total is $76,908,074. And there's also in this article Water Division, which is an enterprise fund, $3,062,023. Okay, is there a second? Oh, wait, I haven't made the motion. Okay. Move that the town raise and appropriate a sum of $76,908,074 And further, that the town appropriate $3,062,223 from the Water Enterprise Fund to meet the expenses and outlays for town departments, salaries of town officers, sundry and miscellaneous but regular expenditures for a reserve fund, to appoint trustees or caretakers, or authorize the select board to appoint caretakers of the cemeteries of the town not otherwise provided for, and all other expenses of the town not otherwise provided for. And further, to set the salaries of an elected town clerk pursuant to General Law, Chapter 41, Section 108, for the ensuing year, with all departmental expenses reflected in a level 4 column of the omnibus budget as presented in the warrant document. The Finance Committee recommends favorable action on all amounts listed in the level 4 column, which is the Finance Committee recommended budget. The vote was 6-0. Mr. Laskowski absent. Okay, do I have a second? Second. Okay, comments? Yeah, if you want to get up and speak.
I just have some comments regarding the school budget.
Okay, could we have your name
Yep,
and address?
Barbara Ryan, 14 Irving Place. Good evening, Select Board, Madam Moderator, town representatives, elected officials, the community at large, and neighbors. I'm speaking tonight as a parent, a neighbor, a taxpayer, a veteran, and a retired healthcare executive, and someone who deeply values public education and my community. Let me be clear. I support strong schools, I support excellent teachers, and I support investing in students and in Holliston's future. I was really glad to hear tonight from the school committee this evening. I would like to acknowledge, on top of the many upfront accolades, really are because of the dedication of many volunteers to the PTO. So I just want to acknowledge them, that the school committee supports. And perhaps this should be a normal report in the cadence of town meeting. I'd like to offer my own insights as we vote to approve the FY 2027 budget specifically towards the school. I believe accountability, measurable outcomes, transparency, and responsible governance matter. Pointedly, the 2024 override was presented to the community as an investment in expanded learning opportunities through extra classroom time, improved student experience, teacher morale to be improved, improved transportation, and strengthening our schools overall. In careful review of the $1.17 million in funding that ultimately was used, the majority supported contractual salary increases, while approximately about 17% or $200,000 of that budget went to transportation-related expenses. To the school committee's credit, the district has remained within the town manager's modeled override growth commitment through staff turnover, retirements, and enrollment-driven adjustments. However, many of the educational and operational outcomes presented alongside the 2024 override, and frankly, even this evening, were not clearly defined meaningfully or measured publicly over time. One example from 2024 was expanded learning time. It became a major part of the public justification for the override. Yet in current practice in the high school, and I have a sophomore in the high school, 4 additional minutes, 4 minutes, were added to an already 77-minute class. And there is publicly no data representing the measurable impact of that. I know I am, and I believe many residents are still asking very reasonable questions about this override. What measurable outcomes were achieved? How was success defined? What academic, operational, and student support improvements can the community clearly point to today? What metrics were tracked? I ask these questions because Holliston is a town with a very strong tradition of valuing education, civic engagement, and community pride. People here care deeply about our schools, our students, and the future of this town. That is exactly why thoughtful stewardship of public resources, measurable outcomes, transparency, accountability, and responsible long-term planning matter, especially as we as Hollistonians and Holliston faces significant future financial and infrastructure decisions. Asking residents to support budget increases, overrides, and major capital investment requires more than emotional appeal alone. And asking these questions does not make someone anti-community, anti-business, anti-teacher, or anti-school. In reviewing this budget, I believe the questions of stewardship and long-term planning become even more important. According to the district's own data, enrollment has declined nearly 10% since the school year 2018-2019, from approximately 2,789 students to 2,515 students projected next year. Yet at the same time, the education budget has increased to approximately 35 or 36% from about $34.8 million to what's being asked today of $45.8 million over the same. This translates $12,500 per student in 2018-19 to approximately $19,000 per student today. And payroll actually represents about 80%, I've heard about almost 87% of the actual budget, operating budget. These aren't opinions, these are facts from the district's own financial presentation. At the same time, and it was acknowledged tonight, student needs are becoming more complex. IEPs have increased, special education enrollment has increased approximately by 25%, and 504 plans have actually increased 50% over the last several years. These realities require serious strategic planning, active governance, financial discipline, and thoughtful leadership from the full school committee. As we understand, school committee oversees the district policy, the superintendent hiring and evaluation. It shares the responsibility of budget development and financial oversight with district leadership, the assistant superintendent for finance and operations, whom I've met with, and I really appreciate his time in teaching me about the budget, the the operations, I mentioned that, the facility director, and of course, our town manager. Budget is a significant responsibility, particularly again as we face long-term financial and infrastructure decisions, operating costs that are increasing, declining state school committee pointed out tonight for schools, increasing student complexity, declining enrollment, and growing financial pressure on residents, including our older residents or those who are living on fixed or constrained incomes. We all know the price of the gas right now and a dozen eggs. Given the significance of the budget responsibility during these times, again, active engagement, strategic planning, and oversight and public discussion from the full school committee are essential. I'd like to offer my support of the $2.5 million feasibility study, but it is critical to Holliston's future and its educational infrastructure. We as a community have to think bigger than simply constructing a more modern version of what we're sitting in today. We have to consider artificial intelligence, changing learning models, evolving workforce demands, and rapidly advancing technology that are already reshaping education as we know it today. Talked to Dan McLeod. He just was at an AI conference Saturday and presented and represented our community and our school really well. If we are to design a high school intended to serve students decades into the future, we should be thinking about flexible, multi-use learning environments that support hands-on learning, community partnerships, career-connected experiences, innovation, critical thinking, adaptability, and human-centered education in concert with ever-changing technologic advances. This is an opportunity not simply to build a building, but to rethink what public education and community assets should look like in an AI-driven future. And in closing on governance, and in the spirit of the 250th anniversary of our country, and as a leader of a variety of different organizations and people, I'll first say I love my neighbors, and I care deeply about Holliston. I value our schools and support all learners, as well as our educators, staff, and administrators. And when I think about healthy governance, and sometimes what I've witnessed via online or in person and public meetings, and what I've heard about has happened behind closed doors. I'm not going to speculate on that, but what I am going to offer is this. Whether you're an elected official, a town employee, a volunteer, or community leader, I believe dignity, respect, and healthy public discourse are essential in a democracy. Strong communities make space for differing opinions, thoughtful questions, and respectful debate. That requires all of us to lower the temperature so honest and productive conversations can occur between individuals in public or in closed-door meetings. and this includes anyone who's elected to constituents, we should be able to ask thoughtful questions in respectful environments without feeling polarized, dismissed, or pressured into choices, because seeing that accountability and support for initiatives or educations or educators cannot coexist. I absolutely know they can coexist. And in support of public education, and the budget tonight, this cannot mean the absence of accountability. So I'll leave tonight, and I don't think these questions can be answered by the school committee, but these are some questions I have for them. What is the district's 5- and 10-year projection regarding enrollment and decline, special education growth, staffing, and per-student spending in your budget considerations? What specific improvements should this community expect to see in student learning, student experience, and district performance as a result of these increasing investments? How will success be specifically measured and communicated to us, the public, following major budget increases and overrides? And how will you, the committee, ensure that all elected members actively engage in oversight, governance, budget review, and long-term strategic planning? And how will all of you create a healthier public culture where respectful questions, differing viewpoints, transparency, and accountability are viewed as necessary parts of leadership, not opposition to initiatives, teachers, or public education? In closing, I thank you for your attention, and I think it's the responsibility of leadership to not simply ask the community for support. It's a shared responsibility of elected officials, public employees, volunteers, and community leaders to provide vision, responsible stewardship, measurable outcomes, and transparent accountability with the expectation of healthy public discourse in return. Thank you.
Are there any more questions or comments, Mr. Blaze?
Jack Blaze, 25 Mitchell Road. I have a few questions for the Commissioner of Public Works. Should I just fire off the questions you now? On the is there? First one is on the trash. Harvey takes that trash away to Wheelabrator. Does the town of Holliston get a piece of the action on the trash to energy? Do we get a rebate? On the water meter, why can't we buy a water meter? Why do we have to rent it? I don't know if town council can answer that, but that seems pretty archaic. That was the old-fashioned days. We used to rent a telephone. Nobody rents a telephone anymore. Not being condescending, but being succinct. I know you've been gung-ho on putting the handicap ramps in on some of the sidewalks, which is excellent. But I'm confused why we would put a handicap ramp to a sidewalk that you can't ride a bicycle down. If you can address that. And the last question I have is on the leaves. If Mr. and Mrs. McGillicuddy hires a landscaper, they can't dump their leaves 5 days a week at the recycle center. You can only go Saturday and have to pay a fee. But if the town makes money converting the leaves into soil, loam, why would we not want as many leaves as we can get? Thank you.
Does anyone want to respond to that? Oh, Sean, okay.
We'll see if I can beat Sean on the way down. To answer your first question, I don't believe I think the term you used was piece of the action. I don't believe we received any financial benefit from the burning of trash at Wheelabrator. That's just.
Excuse me, if you have questions, could you please come up so that everyone could hear them?
Sean beat me for the record.
I guess my question is, in negotiation of the trash contract, if they don't get trash, hobbies, they can't make energy when they burn it. So why wouldn't we say, why can't Holliston residents get a piece of the action?
Right now we currently don't, where'd you go? Oh, There you are. Right now, we currently don't, that's not part of our contract. We're actually under negotiations to renew our contract with a consortium of other towns in Massachusetts. So we'll be happy to bring that to the table, but currently we do not receive any financial benefit from having them incinerate our trash for us.
But that's something you aren't going to address?
Oh, could you please speak into the microphone?
The question was, will we bring it up, and when we go to the consortium of other towns, we'll be happy to see if that's something viable that we can pursue. As to riding bikes on sidewalks, I believe that is a traffic rule and reg, but that's not permitted to ride bikes on the side. Oh, it's not.
Then I'll be succinct. You certainly couldn't ride, you couldn't use a wheelchair on some of the sidewalks with the tree roots sticking up. So I apologize for using a bike. I was trying to be nice.
And what was there was another question I think I missed?
The water meter.
Oh, yeah, do you want to talk about the water meter?
Sean Reese, DPW Director. Yeah, you don't rent the water meters, you own them. You're charged a fee for replacement on your water bill. There's a water meter fee, which is a fee which allows us to maintain and turn over your water meters and the software that's associated with that. So we don't rent water meters. You don't rent them. We own them. You own them.
But that fee just went up. Why did it go up? It went up from $7.50 to $8. Why?
Because they're expensive. The price of the meter goes up. We're in the middle of a software replacement program right now. That's how that fee funds your water meters and your water meter reader, so we can remotely get your readings. So that's what pays for all that stuff, is that fee.
But why wouldn't that come out of the water bill?
It's established as a separate fee, so it's not part of your user fee as far as the amount of water used. It's another fee that pays for your water meter. Unfortunately, you're feed to death, if you want to say it, but it's another fee that pays for the meters.
And how about the leaves in the landfill, recycle center?
Okay, what was that one now?
Dumping the...
Okay, you can't take, so no commercial properties allowed, no commercial. I understand if you hire a landscaper, they can't dump their stuff up there.
Why not?
It's for residents only. We can't.
But if he from a resident's property, it's no different than you bringing leaves from the town property up there.
I don't know where they went to. I wouldn't trust them. They're commercial. This is a discussion, I think, somewhere else. I don't.
So.
But we don't take commercial vehicles up there.
I'm talking residential.
Okay, were there any other questions? Okay, I will,
Sorry.
Frank.
Just to clarify, I misspoke. If you would like to ride your bike on the sidewalk, that is perfectly legal, so I apologize. But if there are concerns about routes, taking up part of the sidewalk, then please reach out to either my office or DPW, and we'll be sure to take a look.
I'm sorry, one quick follow-up. Anytime we repave a road, we're required to put by state law handicap ramps in there. So that's why you'll see a handicap ramp and there's no actual sidewalk. The town has a huge initiative to kind of increase these sidewalks, so that's what we're in the process of doing. But anytime we mill or pave a road, we're required to put new ramps in. That's a state law, okay?
Okay, so we'll take a vote now on Article 17. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, that carries. Okay, Article 18, transfer from available funds a sum of money for the capital expenditure fund. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money for the capital expenditure fund or take any action relative thereto. The motion is, move that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $1,875,000 and appropriate the sum of $325,611 from available free cash from the capital expenditure fund. The Finance Committee recommends that the town raise and appropriate $1,875,000 and appropriate $325,611 from free cash for the capital expenditure fund. That vote was 6-0 with Mr. Laskowski absent. Okay, are there any questions? Second, is there a second? Second. Okay, are there any questions? Okay, we'll take a vote. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Okay, that carries, thank you. Okay, Article 19, the capital budget. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, transfer from available funds, or borrow a sum of money for the purpose of capital expenditures, including replacement of old vehicles and equipment for the following departments: police, ambulance, public works, facilities, and schools, including the expenditures listed below, and authorize the select board to trade or sell equipment towards part of the purchase price or take any action relative thereto. A dump truck for public works highway from the capital expenditure fund, $100,000. Catch basin cleaner for public works highway from the capital expenditure fund, $70,000. Ambulance equipment for ambulance from the capital expenditure fund, $50,000. Building battery backup system for facilities, police, capital expenditure fund, $20,000. A DPW pickup truck for public works highway from capital expenditure fund, $90,000. Kindergarten through 5th grade ELA curriculum resources for schools, capital expenditure fund, $275,000. High school supplies due to the schedule impact, schools, capital expenditure fund from $50,000. K through 8 science curriculum resources from school department from the capital expenditure fund, $150,000. Technology infrastructure for schools from the capital expenditure fund, $150,000. Treatment plant improvements from Public Works Water, and that's from water retained earnings, $300,000. A pickup truck from Public Works Water from water retained earnings, $43,000, for a total of $1,298,000. The motion is move that the town appropriate the sum of $955,000 from the capital expenditure fund and the sum of $343,000 from the water enterprise retained earnings for the purposes listed in Article 19 of the warrant. The Finance Committee recommends that the town appropriate $955,000 from the capital expenditure fund for the items listed as capital expenditure fund and $343,000 from water retained earnings for the 2 items listed as water retained earnings. The vote was 6-0 with Mr. Laskowski absent. Is there a second? Second. Okay, any questions? Okay, we'll proceed to a vote. All those in, oh, this is a 2/3 vote, so if this vote isn't unanimous, we'll take a hand count. Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, so that passes unanimously. Article 20, licensed site professional LSP services for 9 Green Street. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money for a licensed site professional for 9 Green Street or take any action relative thereto. The motion is move that the town appropriate the sum of $20,000 from free cash for the purposes stated in Article 20 of the warrant. The Finance Committee recommends that the town appropriate $20,000 from free cash for the purposes stated. The vote was 6-0 with Mr. Laskowski absent. Is there a second? Okay, any questions? Okay, all those in favor? Oh, there is a question. Oh, I'm sorry.
Lixie Carey, 37 Green Street. So is this just a one-time thing, or are we going to do this every year? I just want a little bit more explanation on this.
Okay.
What exactly we're doing here on Green Street.
Okay.
Thank you for the question. To put this in the, just to make an example of the Marshall Street project that Dr. Shader referred to when he gave his opening remarks. So right now on that site, we're sort of in the, we're just testing every year just to make sure everything's in compliance. On Green Street, we're still doing remediation work. And so these funds will be used for the next few years in order to basically get us to the point where we are on Marshall Street, so that every year we're basically just monitoring as opposed to doing remediation type work.
So this $20,000 is for how many years? Or can you give us a sense exactly what it's?
3 years.
3 years? And then after that, it's like you guys will assess and come up with a new plan?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So in the select board's budget, we actually have a line item for annual testing for Marshall Street, and so eventually this would basically roll into that total that we'd fund every year in the operating budget.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, we'll proceed to a vote. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Okay, that carries. Article 21, Department Head Class and Compensation Study. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money for the purposes of comprehensive classification and compensation study for town personnel, including on the managerial chart for the approved job and wage classification plan. Move that the town appropriate the sum of $10,000 from free cash for the purpose stated in Article 21 of the warrant. The Finance Committee recommends that the town appropriate $10,000 from free cash for the purpose stated. The vote was 6-0. Mr. Laskowski absent. Is there a second? Second. Okay, are there any questions? Oh.
Hi, I'm Lori Markoff, 280 Mark Tree Road. It's really loud and strange. I just wanted to know I don't know enough about these kinds of tools, and I'm wondering, are there breakdowns like about gender and race and that kind of thing? How do we look at those kinds of demographics, or is it just like straight numbers, one column? Somebody know?
Hello, I'm Cheryl Houle. Compensation studies review the positions and where they're placed in the market. The equity would come as a second part of that to make sure that people are receiving fair pay for the work. But the study does not look at that. It just looks at the position, what the responsibilities are, and ensures that it is placed fairly on a scale. Anything else?
Are there any other questions? Okay, we'll proceed to a vote. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Okay, that carries. Article 22, financial support for HCAT. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money to support public educational and governmental cable access service and programming for residents by Holliston Cable Access Television, and authorize the Select Board to execute an agreement for the same on terms and conditions to be negotiated by the Select Board or take any action relative thereto. The motion is, move that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $41,996 for the purpose described in Article 22 of the warrant. The Finance Committee recommends that the town raise and appropriate $41,996 for the purpose stated. The vote was 6-0. Mr. Laskowski absent. Okay, is there a second? Okay, and does anyone wish to be heard? No. Okay, we'll proceed to a vote. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Okay, that carries. Article 23, Community Preservation Committee. To see if the town will vote to act on the report of the Community Preservation Committee for the fiscal year 2026 Community Preservation Budget and to appropriate or reserve for later appropriation monies from the Community Preservation Fund and annual revenues or available funds for the administrative expenses of the Community Preservation Committee, the payment of debt services, the undertaking of community preservation projects, and all other necessary and proper expenses for the year. The reserves are, for the open space reserve is $96,875. Community housing reserve, $96,875. And historic resource reserve, $96,875. The appropriations are Conservation Commission Land Trail Inventory and Assessment, $25,000. Woodland Street Bike Park Construction, $650,000. Whiting House Window Restoration, $15,000. Pinecrest Rock Pile Restoration, $65,000. Baseball and softball field upgrades, $260,000. Administrative costs, $5,000. The motion is, move that the town appropriate the following amounts from the Community Preservation Fund for the respective purposes. $96,875 to each of the open space, community housing, and historic resource reserves, $260,000 for upgrades of baseball and softball field upgrades, $650,000 for the construction of the Woodland Street Bike Park, $15,000 for the restoration of windows at the Whiting House, and $5,000 for administrative costs. Move that the town appropriate $25,000 from the open space reserve for the Conservation Commission Land Trail Inventory and Assessment, and move that the town appropriate $65,000 from the Historic Resources Reserve for the restoration of the Pinecrest Rock Pile. The Finance Committee recommends that the town appropriate the following amounts from the Community Preservation Fund. $96,875 to each of the open space, community housing, and historic preservation reserves, $25,000 for a Conservation Commission Land Trail Inventory and Assessment, $650,000 for the Woodland Street Bike Park, $15,000 for window restoration at the Whiting House, $65,000 for restoration of the Pinecrest Rock Pile, and $5,000 for administrative costs. And their vote was 6-0, Mr. Laskowski absent. The Finance Committee also recommends that the town appropriate $260,000 from the Community Preservation Fund for baseball and softball field upgrades. The vote was 5 to 0 to 1, Mr. Leach abstaining, and Mr. Laskowski absent. Is there a second? Okay, any questions or comments? Okay, since there are a number of people with their hands up, if you want to line up in the aisle.
Bruce Wood, 128 Dalton Road. I have to ask, $65,000 for a rock pile? It's literally a pile of rocks. And why isn't it part of the Pinecrest operating expenses if it needs to be fixed?
Okay, Mr. Chamberlain?
We thought this might come up. Frank Chamberlain, 333 Hollis Street, chair of the Community Preservation Committee. We had some discussions about this, but basically the rock pile is a historic feature. I know it's a pile of rocks, but it dates back to the early part of the 20th century. It was built when the land belonged to a gentleman farmer by the name of Howe, who put his employees to work clearing rocks from the fields and piling them up on the site. We can't trace the history back before that. The reason we voted to support this request is because the rock pile is, nature's taking its effect. It's, the rocks are beginning to work loose and come down in places. Several of them have fallen off the pile. It becomes a safety hazard. The work will involve putting the rocks back. Then the pile is a recognized feature recognized historic feature in the town of Holliston. I think everybody's familiar with it. When we say rock pile, I think everybody here knows what we're talking about. The pile is becoming a safety hazard. It is falling down. The work proposed would do two things. It would put the rocks that have fallen off back on the pile. It would stabilize it. And at the same time, it would fence it so that we don't have a safety hazard at the golf course. We don't have, over-enthusiastic ball chasers climbing up on there and somebody getting hurt. The alternative might be to remove the pile, and I don't know what removing the pile would cost, but I suspect it would be more than the price of putting it up and putting it back and putting a fence together. So that was the reason behind our thought process here. Does that answer the question? Thank you.
Were there other questions or comments? I saw other hands up. Okay. So we'll proceed to a vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, that passes by a majority. Thank you. We're at Article 25, High School Construction Project Feasibility. Oh, I'm sorry. I should be more careful there. Sewer district creation, to see if the town will approve the establishment of a sewer district, the boundaries of which shall follow the village commercial district as set forth in the town zoning map, to be managed by the Sewer Commission pursuant to the provisions of Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40N, and take any action relative thereto. The motion is, move that the town vote to establish a sewer district as described in Article 24 of the warrant. And there were, for anyone who had questions, there were maps on the table outside. Are there any questions? Oh, is there a second? Okay. Are there any questions? Okay, we'll proceed to a vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, that passes. Now, Article 25. High School Construction Project Feasibility Study. To see if the town will vote to appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds an amount of money to be expended under the direction of the Holliston School Building Committee for a feasibility study to consider the replacement or renovation of the Holliston High School on the grounds of 370 Hollis Street, Holliston, Massachusetts, or a comparable location in Holliston, for which feasibility study the town may be eligible for a grant from the Massachusetts School Building Authority. The MSBA's grant program is a non-entitlement discretionary program based on need as determined by the MSBA, and any cost the town incurs in connection with the feasibility study in excess of any grant approved by and received from the MSBA shall be the sole responsibility of the town. The motion is, move that the town appropriate $2,050,000 from the Capital Expenditure Fund, $100,000 from the HVAC Rooftop Unit Reserve Account Fund in Article 9 of the October 2025 town meeting, and $350,000 from Article 9 of the May 2025 town meeting for the purpose stated in the warrant, and further that remaining funds for the purposes will be closed into the Capital Expenditure Fund. The Finance Committee recommends that the town appropriate $1,985,000 from the Capital Expenditure Fund, $100,000 from the HVAC Rooftop Unit Reserve from Article 9 of the October 2025 town meeting, and $350,000 from the Article 19 of the 2025 May town meeting. The vote was 6-0 with Mr. Laskowski absent. This will be a 2/3 vote. Is there a second? Well, okay, is there a second? Comments? Dr. Shada?
Okay, so first of all, Michelle, you read our old incorrect recommendation from the printed warrant that I corrected at the beginning. So just to be clear, the Finance Committee is on board with the full $2.5 million, as $2,050,000 from the Capital Expenditure Fund, $100,000 from the HVAC Rooftop Unit Reserve account funded in Article 9 of the October 2025 town meeting, and $350,000 from what she read was Article 19 of the May 2025 town meeting. I would like to move to amend that to say $350,000 from Article 19 of the May 2025 town meeting, or Article 21 of the May 2023 town meeting, with all the other language the same. And the reason I would like to make that motion is because, as I mentioned during my presentation, it came to our attention on Friday that the vote that was taken last year on Article 19 actually did not pass. It required a 2/3 majority. It was received 63%, was assumed it was majority, and was passed. Okay? Because of that, I don't know, and presumably nobody knows yet, what the implications of that will be in terms of that money. If you recall, to refresh town meeting, the article was to transfer $7 million that we put aside for the DPW debt at Cross Street, to move that into a more general DPW article, okay? So my concern is, and the concern of the committee is, what happens if after this town meeting, with this incorrect and valid vote, somebody, the Attorney General, the town's lawyers, whatever, come back and say, hey, guess what? That money has to go back into the original bucket because the vote never passed. Well, then we're going to pass an article that says take money out of a bucket that's empty, right? So we want to change the language to say take it out of either the transferred money or the original bucket, so that we're covered in the event something happens to that vote afterwards. So I would recommend that we approve the amendment that I just made to cover us so that the $2.5 million gets to the schools regardless of the outcome of that vote that should not have been allowed.
Okay. Dr. Shada, do you have that in writing, your amendment? Okay, I think Attorney Lydon, could we have your opinion on this amendment?
Thank you. So there is some ambiguity in the law as to whether the Municipal Modernization Act applies to the funds that this was appropriated from last year. The Municipal Modernization Act changed the quantum of vote for stabilization funds, special stabilization funds, from 2/3 to majority when you're appropriating out. We have a special act for this particular fund, and the special act reads, notwithstanding the provisions of any general or special law to the contrary, and requires a 2/3 vote. So there is some ambiguity. It hasn't been weighed in on. We just discovered that the prior quantum of vote was done by a majority on Friday, as he mentioned, and the thought was that if we appropriate out of that fund by a 2/3 vote, that we can ratify the funding source with that 2/3 vote. So it's not clear whether we need this or not. However, that is to say, if we have this additional language in here, I'm not sure that it would impact the vote. However, there is a requirement from the MSBA that motions get approval or prior approval from the MSBA, and the motion with this amendment has not received that approval, so there's some uncertainty there as well.
Okay, and first of all, is there a second to the motion to amend? Okay.
Ben wants to speak.
Okay. Ben?
Hi, Ben Sparrow, 9 Forest Park Drive, Chair of the Select Board. I just wanted to make a proposal that could kind of like maybe make this a little bit easier here. So my proposal would be, of course it would be another motion, would be to take the entire amount from CapEx, so it would be, and hear me out here, so it would be $2,400,000 from the capital expenditure fund, and then the, once we have DOR notification on what was going on with those articles, then the Select Board would release the $350,000 to CapEx from the appropriate article. And then it would make it a little bit cleaner and easier, so rather than having a complicated, but I also want to make sure that the school committee is comfortable with anything that we're doing. So I want to put that out on the table, and if people are comfortable with that, I'll make a motion to do that. It's a little easier, but I want the school committee to be comfortable with anything we do.
Ben, was that a motion to amend? Okay.
So I'm going to make history tonight, and Dan Alford, 315 High Street, Budget Chair of the School Committee. I'm going to make history tonight, and I'm going to agree with the Select Board and disagree with the Finance Committee. It's just parallel universe. So it is true that we do need the MSBA funding. However, I think that this simplifies where the funding is coming from, the ambiguity, and I feel more comfortable with this than doing it, looking at both funding sources. So I'm comfortable with what Ben's suggestion to take 2.5 from CapEx and the 100,000 from the, apologies, 2.4 from CapEx and 100,000 from the HVAC unit. That's right. So we have to actually kill the Finance Committee, Ken's recommendation first. Let's do that.
Right, we still have to vote on the original, the amendment.
Okay, so while in theory I'm okay with that, just me, we haven't voted it, I'll just say this. We know that one of the two buckets, the money's going to be in one of the two buckets. Okay? If the argument against making my motion was, we didn't get this approved by MSBA, this to me seems like even a more dramatic change than what I was suggesting. I was suggesting just point out it's one of the two buckets so that when this is resolved, we get it from the right bucket. In my mind, if MSBA is not fine with that, I don't know if we want to work with them, because frankly, that's a common sense move to say we found this problem at the last minute. We wanted to ensure the funding was there to show community support. I think we take, while I'm not in theory opposed to that proposal, I think that that's a more significant change, so to speak, to the motion that was approved by MSBA than what I'm recommending. So, I mean, I'd be happy either way. I want to get the schools their $2.5 million, right? But I'm saying if the argument against my motion was you're changing the motion and the MSBA didn't approve it, this is to me a more substantial change. So.
Disagree. So since he didn't get credit earlier and he wanted it, Mr. Boudet, former Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations, did make the point that we have actually already the school committee has already voted to release the $100,000 from the HVAC back to the capital fund. So in theory, we could actually just do a straight $2.5 million from the capital fund and just make it incredibly clean, neat, and move forward with that. So. So first, I guess we'll vote on Dr. Shea's motion, and then we can go forward from there.
Right, we have to vote on the original motion to amend. And let me just read that so that there's no confusion. Okay, so the motion to amend is move that the town appropriate $2,050,000 from the capital expenditure fund, $100,000 from the HVAC rooftop unit reserve account fund and Article 9 of the October 2025 town meeting, and $350,000 from Article 19 of the May 2025 town meeting, or Article 21 of the May 2023 town meeting, for the purposes stated in the warrant, and further that any remaining funds for these purposes will be closed into the capital expenditure fund. Okay, so that's Mr. Robinson?
Yep. Jay Robinson, 233 Chamberlain Street. Can we get like a direct guidance from council? Because we've had two different recommendations that conflict with what we were advised by council, that you can't change the motion, the motion. So they seem like I'm with Ken, like one is more radical than the other, but Ken's not a lawyer, I'm not a lawyer, and we're in this situation because of a lawyer. So can we get some guidance on the record from town council on the least risky approach?
For the record, I don't think that we're in this situation because of a lawyer. However, I think that if we were to remove the reference to the prior article altogether, we already have the capital expenditure fund in the motion, which has already been approved by the MSBA, and I think that would be cleaner than having an either-or appropriation.
All right, okay. All right, so here's what I am proposing as the change. It's gonna
Wait, we have to vote on
You're going to
the-
vote on this? Okay. Vote on Ken's motion. Got it.
Okay, so we're talking about the motion to amend that I just read.
This is Ken's
Okay.
motion. My motion. Ken's motion. Yes, this guy's motion. That guy's.
Okay, I will read the original motion, but that is not what we're voting on. I don't want to confuse it too much. Oh, I thought she wanted. Okay, you just want the amendment. Okay, this is the amendment that we're voting on right now, and it's the one that Dr. Shada made originally. Move that the town appropriate $2,050,000 from the capital expenditure fund, $100,000 from the HVAC rooftop unit reserve account funded in Article 9 of the October 2025 town meeting, and $350,000 from Article 19 of the May 2025 town meeting, or Article 21 of the May 2023 town meeting for the purposes stated in the warrant, and further that any remaining funds for these purposes will be closed into the capital expenditure fund. Okay?
That's Ken's motion. Yes, that's my.
Mr. Murphy? And you're talking about, you're speaking on the motion to amend, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Vin Murphy, 432 Norfolk. My concern, thinking as the MSBA lawyer, and I'm not a lawyer, but I'm thinking the way it reads, either or, and I think they would need what makes one become the other. I understand that, but I think we need to clarify that in the motion so it clear, if they're reading it, they'll know exactly what triggers what. So we're getting rid of Ken's.
No, we have to vote, vote. There's no getting rid of. There's voting for or against.
So please vote no on this, so Mr. Sparrow can make the next motion that I think at least the school committee and the select board agree on.
Okay.
And Dr. Jordan has also said yes.
Okay, are we all set to vote on the motion to amend that I just read that Dr. Shada proposed? Okay. Well, you have to come up to the podium. No, you have to come up to the podium.
Yes.
Yes.
They can't hear you on TV, that's why. That's fine. So,
Wait a minute, name and address, please.
My name is Ryan Lapham. I live at 29 Sweetgrass Lane in Holliston. And I grew up in Medway, and I love the town. If this doesn't get passed, what does this stop younger people to? All I'm saying is, if the funding doesn't get passed to do these studies, what does it keep younger families coming in this town? The tax rate's high.
We're not talking about the article itself. We're talking about the
What I'm trying to say is, like, for the town to move forward, we need to do this stuff. Like, we need to. It's only the town moves forward.
Okay.
Like, and I'm a Mustang at heart, but go Panthers. But this stuff needs to move forward. Like, we need to get up to snuff to the other towns and where the other towns are. And that's all I can say. I'm raising a young family here. What's to keep me here? What's to bring other families in? So if I'm speaking out of talks on what's going on here, either way, the 2.5 mil needs to come from somewhere. And,
Right.
and that's $1 or $2 a piece. Like, we need that in this town.
Okay, to clarify, we're voting on the motion to amend. We're not voting on the merits of it right now. We're voting on whether that motion to amend should substitute for the original motion, and then we can discuss the merits of the article as amended if that passes. Okay, we're not voting on the article, we're voting on the motion to amend. That's the nature of town meeting. Okay. No, Ben, did you want to speak?
We're going to vote?
Okay. We're now voting on the motion to amend. All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed, say nay. Nay. Okay, so the motion to amend did not pass. Now we're back to the original motion that I read in the very beginning.
Yes, now I'm going to amend that.
Okay.
But I promise, I apologize for confusion. I know this is like, I want to make this as simple as possible. So my motion is move that the town appropriate $2.5 million from the capital expenditure fund for the purpose stated in the warrant, and further that any remaining funds for the purposes will be closed back into the capital expenditure fund. That's it. That's nice and simple.
Okay, and was there a second? Okay, now we're discussing Mr. Sparrow's motion to amend. Are there any? Okay, so now we're voting on the motion to amend, and to be clear, we're not voting on the article, we're voting on if the motion to amend that Mr. Sparrow just made substitutes for the original motion, okay? All those in favor of the motion to amend, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, so that carries. Now, we're back to discussing the original article for the $2.5 million for the feasibility study with the funding as amended. Okay. Well, you don't have to second it because you seconded the motion to amend. Right? Sorry? That doesn't need another second, right? Because on the amended motion. Right, so we're voting on the amended motion. Are there any questions or comments on that? Dr. Shada.
Yeah, just vote yes on this, okay? Okay. Now let me just say, I'm going to speak very briefly. I just want to say, they support it, we support it, town seems to support it, so we all want the $2.5 million. We get that. This is just a technical thing, but I wanted to point out for the record, we wouldn't have had to have this discussion if the rules had been followed last year. Okay? So let's make sure we follow the rules from now on so that we don't have to waste 20 minutes at a town meeting worrying about a potential problem. Vote yes, and let's move on.
Okay, you had.
Michael Tanby, 25 Morgan's Way. So I've sat in a couple of town hall meetings, and DPW is an example, where we vote on a feasibility study for a new DPW site that's going to cost so much, and then we go to the next one, and it's another feasibility study, and the price is more, and then it's another. It feels like an endless cycle. So my question is, if we vote for this $2.5 million, are we actually making progress towards a new high school, or are we just doing more feasibility studies and more consultants or more any? That's what I'm trying to figure out here.
Okay, does anyone want to respond? Sarah?
Sarah Fitzgerald, Chair of the Holliston School Committee, and the answer is yes. If we vote for the $2.5 million today to start the feasibility study, June 1st is when the eligibility period starts, and it'll kick everything off. So yes.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Jefferson Wood, 46 Fairlane Way. I move the question.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion. A motion to move the question. All those in favor of moving the question, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, so now we're voting on the feasibility study, $2.5 million, and this, to be clear, is a 2/3 vote. We don't want to mess that up. So if it isn't unanimous, we will take a hand count. So all those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, that carries unanimously. We would appreciate people waiting for the business of the town isn't concluded.
So we still have business to complete here, and we need to make sure we keep a quorum. So if you can stay, please do. We have a few more articles. It shouldn't take too long, I promise. And I have no more amendments, so.
That we know of. Okay. Article 26, Road Acceptance, Constitution Village. To see if the town will vote to authorize the Select Board to accept as a public way the roads depicted in Old Cart Path, STA 0+00 to 32+00, Pout Lane, Governor Prentice Way, Hiawatha Trail, and Minuteman Circle as shown on the plans of land entitled Layout Plan, Old Cart Path and Pout Lane, Holliston, Mass., dated January 21st, 2025, prepared by Garrier and Hanlon, Inc., Engineering and Land Surveying for owner, Constitution Village, LLC, and layout plan, Governor Prince Way, Hiawatha Trail and Minuteman Circle, Holliston, Mass., dated March 9th, 2023, and revised August 21st, 2023, prepared by Garrier and Hanlon, Inc., Engineering and Land Surveying for owner and applicant, Constitution Village, LLC, said plans being on file with the town clerk, such ways having been laid out as town ways by the Select Board, and further to authorize the Select Board to accept deeds for such ways, along with associated drainage and utility easements as may be shown on such plan. The motion is move that the town accept Old Cart Path, Pout Lane, Governor Prince Way, Hiawatha Trail, and Minuteman Circle as described in Article 26 as public ways, and to authorize the Select Board to acquire easements and deeds in relation to such acceptance as further described in Article 26 of the warrant. Is there a second? Okay. And okay. So are there any comments or questions? Okay, we'll go right to a vote. Oh, someone here. Oh, I'm sorry.
Martha DeVoe, 35 Robin Hill Road. A few years ago, we had this same kind of motion, and I believe the Highway Department said the roads in that section of the town were not up to the town's standards, and that to take this on would be an expense to the town in making sure they became up to those standards. Is that still the case, or has that been addressed?
Great question. So there are actually multiple parts to the subdivision, and so when the other parts of the subdivision were accepted, parts of which include Old Cart Path, I think that was the case. Every piece of infrastructure, the roadway, everything that's on the article, on the warrant this evening, has been inspected by DPW and is up to par.
Are there any other questions? Okay, we'll proceed to a vote. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Okay, that passes. Article 27, Animal Control General Bylaw Update, Kennels. To see if the town will vote to amend Article 29, Section 2 and 10 of the town's general bylaws as follows, or take any action relative thereto. And the motion is, move that the town vote to amend Article 29, Sections 2 and 10 of the town's general bylaws as set forth in Article 27 of the warrant. Oh. And I have this letter from the planning board in relation to this article. Oh, that's for 28. Okay, hold on.
Ben wants to speak.
Oh, okay, because it does, yeah, Ben?
It doesn't say what the change is. It's missing.
Okay, Mr. Sparrow?
Yes. Wait. Yes. You always second the motion?
Oh, second?
Second.
Okay.
Hi, Ben Sparrow, Chair of the Select Board. This is sponsored by the Town Clerk. She's up there, so I'm speaking on her behalf with this. Just to sort of mention that Articles 27 and 28, the only changes that they are making are in the number of dogs for the general bylaw and the zoning bylaw, so that they are the same for a kennel, and they are consistent with state law. Number's 5, right?
Yes.
5, okay? So that's why these two are here, and that is the change that is taking place. Thank you.
Okay, are there any further questions or comments?
Hold on a sec.
Jamie Ring, 427 Prentice Street. I have a question. I don't know if this is a typo. In 27, it says that a kennel is a pack of 5 or more dogs. In Article 28, it says a pack or collection of more than 5 dogs. Those are inconsistent with each other. Thanks.
We'll have an answer for you in a second.
So 5 or more, it says in 27, it says 5 or more. 28, it says, 28 says. I guess I'm gonna have No, that's just.
So right here, more than.
So it's the same thing. So it's
No, it should be 5 or more. It is wrong. 28 is wrong. It should be 5 or more. This is saying more than 5. It should be 5.
So it's 5 or more. It should be 28. So 28 needs to say 5 or more.
Okay, so Article 27 is correct. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. And 28 will have to be amended. There will have to be a motion to amend. So let's vote on Article 27 first, okay? So any other questions on Article 27? Okay, let's proceed to a vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, that passes. Article 28, I'm going to read what it currently says, okay? To see if the town will vote to amend the definition of kennel under Town of Holliston zoning bylaws at Section 1E, definition as follows, or take any action relative thereto. And the... Oh, okay. And the motion is move that the town vote to amend the definition of kennel under Town of Holliston bylaws at Section 1E definitions as set forth in Article 28 of the warrant. And this is a zoning issue. So I have a letter from the planning board addressed to Dear Mrs. Zemer. It's concerning Article 28, Sections IE, definitions, kennel, zoning bylaw amendment. With regard to the proposed amendment to the zoning bylaws at section noted above, I would respectfully report that the Planning Board held a public hearing as required by Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 5, on May 7th, 2026. The members voted 5-0 in support of the proposed article as printed in the warrant. If you should have any questions regarding this matter, board members will be present at town meeting. Okay, so did we do a second? Second? Okay. Okay, and is there a motion to amend this? Okay. Okay.
So, under kennel.
Okay. Are you speaking, Frank, or is it Frank? Okay, Mr. Sparrow? Oh,
Barbara Peety, 166 Union Street, and Planning Board. This sentence says, they clarified by saying 3 months old, so that if you have a dog that has puppies, you're not charged for them as a kennel. And then it says, or over. So although the sentence structure is different from the first one, it says exactly the same, except for the puppies.
right.
It still has to be in there.
Okay, so the motion would be to move 28 to say a pack of
5 or more dogs.
5 or more dogs.
3 months old or over.
There.
But the
What
public
does it say?
hearing said,
It doesn't have any numbers.
doesn't have any numbers. So is that okay? The public hearing didn't have any numbers. That's what,
We just listed the bylaw. Do you want to indefinitely postpone it?
you could do it. See what it is. As per the law, so then you can't.
No, can't.
As the way. So we indefinitely.
Motion, move to indefinitely postpone. Postpone.
Yep.
No.
Indefinitely postpone. Yep.
Okay, Mr. Sparrow? Would you like to? Would it?
No, because of the hearing.
All right, I'll make a motion to indefinitely postpone, just so we can get this figured out. I apologize.
Okay, is there a second to the motion to indefinitely postpone? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to indefinitely postpone? All those opposed? Okay, thank you. Sorry. Article 29, 52 Jasper Hill, access and utility easement. To see if the town will vote to authorize the Select Board to grant a non-exclusive access and utility easement for purposes of providing access and installation of utilities to and from the land known as 52 Jasper Hill Road, Assessor's Plan ID 008.0005-0016.0, as shown on a plan entitled Existing Conditions Jasper Hill Road, Holliston, Mass., dated December 5th, 2025, prepared by Applewood Survey Company, LLC, on file with the town clerk on such terms and conditions as the Select Board shall determine, including with any such restrictions the Select Board may deem appropriate, said conveyances to be for such consideration as the Select Board deems appropriate, including nominal considerations, and to authorize the Select Board to enter into and/or execute any agreements or instruments as may be necessary for such conveyances, or pass any vote or take any action relative thereto. And the motion is move to approve Article 29 as printed in the warrant, and this is a 2/3 vote. Any questions or comments? Is there a second? Okay, any questions or comments? Okay, we'll proceed to a vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, that passes. Article 30, 52 Jasper Hill, stormwater easement. To see if the town will vote to authorize the Select Board to convey a non-exclusive stormwater management easement for purposes of the improvement, construction, and/or installation of stormwater management over or under the land shown as stormwater management easement, as shown on plan entitled Easement Sketch dated February 21st, 2023 by Applewood Survey Company, LLC, on file with the town clerk, on such terms and conditions as the Select Board may determine, including with any such restrictions the Select Board may deem appropriate. Said conveniences to be for consideration as the Select Board deems appropriate, including nominal considerations, and to authorize the Select Board to enter into and/or execute any offers, licenses, temporary or permanent easements, agreements, or instruments as may be necessary for such conveyance, and to expend funds which may be necessary for professional engineering, architectural services, design, site investigation, testing, preparation, and/or demolition, installation, and all other incidental and related costs, or pass any vote or take any action relative thereto. The motion is move to approve Article 30 as printed in the warrant. This is also a 2/3. Is there a second? Second. Okay, any questions or comments? Okay, let's proceed to a vote. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. The town meeting is adjourned. And thank you all for attending and staying.